You're chilling at your peaceful lakeside cabin, minding your own business when a raging HOA Karen storms up, demanding you pack up and leave because you're violating community rules. You stand your ground. She flips out and dials 911, but when the cops arrive, the twist hits like a thunderbolt. You don't just own the cabin, you own the entire county. Buckle up for this epic tale of entitlement meeting its match. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we dive into the wildest HOA horror stories and Karen meltdowns that leave you cheering for justice. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. And if you're loving these tales of petty tyrants getting owned, drop a like right now. It really helps the channel grow. Alright, let's jump into today's insane story. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, nestled along the shimmering shores of Lake Evergreen, lived a man named Alex Thompson. At 45 years old, Alex had spent the last decade building a life of solitude and simplicity in his modest lakeside cabin. The cabin wasn't much to look at from the outside, a weathered wooden structure with a wraparound porch that creaked underfoot, overlooking the calm waters where ducks glided lazily and fish jumped at dawn. But to Alex, it was paradise, a refuge from the chaos of his former corporate life in the city. He had inherited the property from his late grandfather, who had always spoken of it as a hidden gem, far removed from the prying eyes of neighbors and the suffocating grip of urban regulations. Little did Alex know, the inheritance held secrets that would upend not just his life, but the entire community around him. The town of Willowbrook had grown over the years, transforming from a sleepy hamlet into a gated enclave of upscale homes, thanks to the aggressive expansion of the local homeowners association, or HOA as it was infamous for. Led by a woman named Karen Whitaker, the HOA enforced rules with an iron fist, rules about lawn heights, paint colors, and even the types of boats allowed on the lake. Karen, a retired real estate agent in her late 50s, had made it her mission to preserve the community's prestige, which really meant bullying anyone who didn't fit her vision of perfection. She patrolled the streets in her golf cart, clipboard in hand, noting infractions and issuing fines that could bankrupt the unwary. Alex's cabin sat on the outskirts, technically within the county lines, but predating the HOA's formation by decades. He had never joined the association, viewing it as an unnecessary intrusion, and for years they had left him alone. That changed one crisp autumn morning when Karen decided his property was an eyesore that threatened property values. She had heard rumors from other residents about Alex's unkempt lifestyle, his overgrown garden, the old fishing boat tied to his dock, and the occasional bonfire that sent smoke wafting over the lake. Determined to assert her authority, Karen drove her golf cart up the winding dirt road to Alex's cabin, her face set in a perpetual scowl. As she approached, she saw Alex sitting on the porch sipping coffee from a chipped mug, his dog, a loyal golden retriever named Max, lazing at his feet. The scene offended her sensibilities. It was too rustic, too free-spirited for the polished image she envisioned for Willowbrook. Without a word of greeting, she launched into her tirade. But since this is a narration-only tale, we'll focus on the unfolding events through the lens of observation. Karen's presence disrupted the morning peace, her gestures sharp and demanding as she pointed at the cabin's faded exterior and the boat bobbing in the water. Alex remained calm, his posture relaxed, refusing to engage in the confrontation she sought. He simply shook his head when she insisted he comply with HOA guidelines, explaining quietly that his property wasn't under their jurisdiction. This refusal ignited Karen's fury. She saw it as a direct challenge to her power. Pacing back and forth, she pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling with rage as she dialed the non-emergency line first. But when that didn't yield immediate results, she escalated to 911, claiming an intruder was squatting on community land and refusing to leave. The operator on the other end took her report seriously, dispatching officers to the scene. Within minutes, sirens echoed through the trees, drawing curious neighbors from their homes. 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing, and officers stepped out, assessing the situation with professional detachment. Karen stood triumphantly, arms crossed, expecting a swift eviction. Alex, still on his porch, greeted the officers with a nod, handing over his identification and property deed without resistance. The officers reviewed the documents, their expressions shifting from routine to puzzled as they cross-checked records on their tablets. Whispers passed between them, and one made a call back to the station for verification. Meanwhile, a small crowd gathered at the edge of the road, phones out, capturing the drama for social media. Karen's confidence began to waver as the officers turned to her, explaining that Alex's ownership was legitimate and predated the HOA. But she doubled down, insisting on a deeper investigation, her voice rising in pitch. The officers, sensing the escalation, suggested everyone calm down and promised to look into it further. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden rays over the lake, Alex returned to his coffee, watching the scene unfold with quiet amusement. Karen stormed off, vowing to take it to the board, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Little did she know this was just the beginning of a revelation that would shake Willowbrook to its core. That evening, as Alex sat by the fire pit, staring at the stars reflected in the lake, he pondered the day's events, unaware that his grandfather's legacy held far more than a simple cabin. It encompassed layers of history buried in old county records. The next day promised more confrontations, but for now, the night brought a tentative peace, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. The following morning dawned with a chill in the air, the leaves turning vibrant shades of red and orange around Lake Evergreen. Alex woke early, as was his habit, brewing a fresh pot of coffee and taking Max for a walk along the shoreline. The events of the previous day lingered in his mind, but he pushed them aside, focusing on the serenity of his surroundings. However, tranquility was short-lived. Word of the 911 call had spread like wildfire through Willowbrook's gossip networks, and by mid-morning, a delegation from the HOA arrived at his doorstep. Led by Karen, of course, but accompanied by 2 board members, a stern accountant named Harold and a nervous homemaker called Susan, they came armed with stacks of paperwork, determined to prove Alex's non-compliance. Karen's demeanor was even more aggressive, her steps purposeful as she marched up the porch steps, thrusting documents at Alex. The papers outlined supposed violations, unauthorized structures, environmental infractions, and claims that his land encroached on communal property. Alex accepted the bundle without argument, scanning them briefly before setting them aside. He knew his rights, but the intrusion grated on him. As the group pressed their case, emphasizing the HOA's authority over the Lakeside developments, Alex felt a spark of curiosity about his grandfather's old stories. The old man had often mentioned owning the heart of the county, but Alex had dismissed it as exaggeration. Now, with pressure mounting, he decided it was time to dig deeper. After the delegation left, unsatisfied but promising legal action, Alex drove into town to the county clerk's office, a quaint brick building downtown. The clerk, an elderly woman named Mrs. Ellis, recognized him immediately, her eyes lighting up with fond memories of his grandfather. She guided him to the archives, pulling out dusty ledgers and faded maps that detailed land grants from the 1800s. As Alex pored over the records, patterns emerged. His grandfather hadn't just bought the cabin. Through a series of acquisitions and inheritances, the family held title to vast swaths of land, including much of what now formed Willowbrook. But the real shock came when Mrs. Ellis revealed a sealed envelope from his grandfather's estate, unopened until now. Inside were deeds showing that Alex owned not only the Lakeside parcel, but controlling interests in the county's undeveloped lands, effectively making him the largest landowner in the area. This ownership predated the HOA by generations, granting him veto power over many developments. Stunned, Alex spent the afternoon verifying the information with a local attorney, who confirmed the legitimacy and advised on next steps. Meanwhile, back in Willowbrook, Karen rallied her allies, hosting an emergency HOA meeting in the community center. The room buzzed with tension as residents voiced concerns about property values plummeting if that eyesore remained. Karen painted Alex as a reclusive troublemaker, urging a petition to force his compliance or eviction. Plans were made to involve the county commissioners, unaware that Alex's discoveries were about to turn the tables. As evening fell, Alex returned to his cabin, the weight of his newfound status sinking in. He watched the sunset paint the lake in hues of pink and gold, Max at his side, contemplating how to proceed. The confrontation had awakened a sense of justice in him. No longer would he be the passive outsider. Tomorrow he would confront the HOA on their turf. But for tonight, the cabin offered solace, the gentle lapping of waves a promise of impending change. The stage was set for a showdown that would expose the fragility of entitled power. As the first light of dawn broke over Lake Evergreen, Alex prepared for what he knew would be a pivotal day. Armed with copies of the deeds and legal opinions, he drove to the HOA's monthly board meeting, held in the pristine community hall adorned with banners proclaiming unity and excellence. The hall was packed, residents filling the seats whispering about the ongoing drama. Karen presided at the front, gavel in hand, her expression one of smug assurance as she called the meeting to order. She opened with announcements, then swiftly moved to the agenda item labeled Lakeside Property Dispute. Describing Alex's cabin as a blight, she proposed resolutions to pressure the county for intervention, rallying the crowd with tales of declining aesthetics and safety concerns. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. When public comments opened, Alex stood, his presence causing a hush. He approached the podium, laying out his documents methodically. Step by step, he revealed the historical ownership, explaining how his family's lands formed the backbone of the county, including easements and rights that superseded the HOA's charter. Gasps echoed as he detailed the extent. Over 60% of the county's unincorporated areas, including key access points to the lake that the community relied on. Karen's face drained of color, her attempts to interrupt brushed aside by the moderator. The attorney Alex had consulted joined via speakerphone, corroborating the claims with legal precedents. The room erupted in confusion. Some residents sided with Karen, demanding proof while others began questioning the HOA's overreach. As the meeting devolved, county officials arrived, summoned by Alex's preemptive call. They confirmed the records, stating that any HOA actions against his property were invalid. The twist deepened when it emerged that Karen's own home sat on land leased from Alex's estate, a detail buried in fine print from decades ago. Humiliation washed over her as the implications sank in. Her reign of petty tyranny was built on borrowed ground. In the days that followed, Willowbrook transformed. Alex, now recognized as the county's de facto owner, chose mercy over revenge. He renegotiated leases fairly, easing burdensome rules and fostering a more inclusive community. Karen stepped down from the board, her influence shattered, retreating to a quieter existence. The lakeside cabin stood as a symbol of resilience, its owner finally at peace. The story of the HOA Karen who called 911 only to discover the intruder's true power became legend, a cautionary tale whispered around bonfires and dinner tables. And so justice prevailed in the most unexpected way, proving that sometimes the quiet ones hold the biggest secrets. Thanks for tuning in to this wild HOA takedown story. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, subscribe for more epic tales, and ring the bell so you catch every upload. Drop your own crazy neighbor stories in the comments below and I'll see you in the next one.